Indiana begun their season, so to speak, with an exhibition over Marion. They play again tomorrow night against St. Francis, the team that has Damon Bailey's son on it. So both of these games were Indiana connections. The AD for Marion is Steve Downing, rather, a longtime player for IU. They honored that 72, I think it was a 72-73 team at the half. A lot of great players there, John Leskowski and those guys out there. So that was cool to see. More importantly, got to see most of the team for the first time together. The freshmen. I was mostly impressed by Malik Renew. He just played like it did not look like a first college basketball game. They were exactly like I thought from seeing them play at Montverde. They have just played up. They've already played up. They're used to the big stage, and the big stage it's just another stage to them. It's another game to them. I'm sure maybe inside that they can get jacked up, but on the floor, they look like they are veterans.
Well, when you play at a prep school competition, you're playing against guys who are probably going to play college basketball at some level. Whereas if you're playing at most high school programs, you might only encounter 3 or 4 guys who are college level players the entire season. So they're used to playing against better competition. They're probably getting better coaching. They're at a place where basketball is the focus of why they're there. I mean, I'm sure they're getting an education too, but you go to a prep school to up your commitment to basketball. So, yeah, I didn't see the game because I was covering the Louisville Wake Forest football game, but I was following it on stat broadcast. And in fact, I think Indiana's still scoring points on stat broadcast.
Yes, that's been a running joke.
It was like 119-47 the last time I looked it up.
Oh, is it?
Logan Duncombe had a quadruple double on Statcast.
We use, for those who don't understand, there's a system that we get to use where the stat crew really is on it with all the stats, everything, bam, bam. It's always there ready for you. And Saturday for the Indiana game, it was just crazy. The minutes are still screwed up, and as Rick just said, they're still scoring points. I don't know what's going on with that. Definitely not the U of L crew's not handling that deal then.
No, but I mean, Renew sounded like he was not only good, but he played within himself and didn't do a bunch of crazy things. Great footwork, great awareness of where he needed to be on the court and where other teammates were on the court. Sounded like Duncombe did have a solid game. Sounded like Galloway showed some things, and it sounded, from what I've heard and read, that Race Thompson hit those threes and actually did look like a shooter, not a guy just out there trying to win 3 teddy bears at the county fair, like he was a dude who could actually shoot the ball. And they did it without Jackson Davis and obviously Scoop Bates. So, really Indiana's not going to have a show-me game until they play who? It's going to be the first one is Arizona out in Vegas. Is that the first of the Big 4? Or is Carolina?
Unless you
Carolina's the first one, actually, isn't it?
Well, Xavier,
yeah.
Xavier's first?
Xavier's the third game in, and it's a road game.
Well, that'll be a hard game.
But Xavier did get mopped by Vanderbilt.
Yeah, but it's at Xavier. I've been to the Cintas Arena. That's a pretty good home court advantage. They got those 4 big non-conference games: Xavier, Arizona, Kansas, and Carolina. They need to at least split them, I would think. And I see so. It's already become trendy to knock Indiana. I saw that The Athletic yesterday came out with a story of who's most likely to be the most disappointing team, and Seth Davis was beating the drum for Indiana. I think they got 4 votes, which I find it hard to believe that Indiana, if they're going to start up the season 14th or 15th in the poll, they would have to finish the season outside of the top 25 to really be disappointing. I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't either. I mean, they may not win the Big Ten, but I just cannot fathom them not being a
top 25 team.
Tough challenger for that. Kevin said that they should have gotten this transfer from Belmont, Will Richard. Have to remember him.
Can't get them all, Kevin. They didn't have any roster spots. They took Malik Renew instead.
That's right, man. He's something. And you got to see Logan Duncombe have a double-double, even though it's against I know Marion, but just seeing him get in there and play with some confidence.
What I liked about that was that Mike Woodson, A, sent him to the press conference after the game, and B, called him out in the locker room and said, I've given you hell all last year, and you had a heck of a game today. So, and that kind of showed me, the players' affection for Mike Woodson. It do seem that they respect Mike Woodson, but they also like him. And the scene that we saw that they put up on social media when he did that to Logan Duncombe, I thought that was a nice touch.
And the biggest question, Dustin and Rick, is still Xavier Johnson, which is funny because he's a senior, he's a veteran,
right?
And a veteran should not be a question mark, but it is the question mark for this team even after the first game, which you can't go on first game. He was 2 for 11, whatever. But was he 2 for 11 because it was just an off game, or was he 2 for 11 because he's forcing things? That's where you have to look at and what you have to look at, because if you look at all the other stat lines, everybody else was efficient, very efficient.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing you can say this year is if Xavier Johnson doesn't have it going one night, he has options. He can go with Hood Schifino and Galloway, or Hood Schifino and Bates, or Hood Schifino and whatever other way he wants to go. So,
but would he do that? Would he pull someone like Xavier out, because he has not shown that he likes to do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, Xavier Johnson played great last year. The last 8 or 10 games. Yeah. He's now a fifth? Is he a 5th-year guy or a 6th-year guy? He's at least maybe a 5th-year guy.
Maybe a 9th. I don't know.
But I agree. I heard he forced a few shots early. And the one thing he does that I think is one of the things he needs to clean up on his game is I think he takes some forced 2s, like in the mid-range, and those are the worst shots in basketball. You either take a 3 or you get to the rim and get fouled or get a layup. If you're taking, contested 10 or 12 footers, those aren't great shots. And so, I'm sure they're working with him to try and figure out how he can play better, and we'll see what he does against St. Francis. And then the opener is Monday against Morehead State. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'll be there for that one.
My question for him is, when you're not – in the past, I feel like when he's not shooting the basketball well, it impacts other areas of his game.
Right.
Has he matured to a point where, hey, you know what, I'm not making shots, I'm not going to force it, I'm going to find my teammates. And I don't put too much stock into what he did in the exhibition game. There's no real negative outcome there. You're not going to – it's not going to count for the record. Maybe he's just trying to find his shot. But when those games start to count, is he going to be able to, rein it back a little bit, say, I'm not hitting, I'm going to find ways to impact this game on the defensive end, through passing or rebounding or whatever it takes? That's kind of the question I have on him, because he's going to have some nights where he's just not hitting. That's just kind of the player he is.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you're talking about the emotional maturity to know that, okay, it's not falling for me tonight, but what I have to do is impact winning in another way. And we got him saying this, plenty of other guys on the team that can score. It's their turn. Get them the ball in the spots where they need to get the ball to be efficient and effective. And that's what a really good point guard does anyway. And I think, we saw enough examples of it last year that he's got a pretty good vibe going with Trace Jackson Davis, who wasn't on the floor of this game in the pick and roll game. So maybe that explains part of it, because last year I thought, down the stretch, he and Trace Jackson Davis ran the pick and roll really well.
But I think another concern is, will Xavier and Jalen Hood-Schifino work well together? That because they're very similar. Both they're kind of playing the same position, and are interchangeable basically. So as long as the team stays within the team, they will be very, 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 very tough.
Well, both of them are going to have to learn to play well and effectively off the ball. You can't have 2 guards who are ball dominant. So, are they going to share it and take turns, initiating offense? Is one guy going to learn to play more off the ball? That'll be an interesting development, because last year there was no question when Xavier Johnson was in the game. He was the guy who brought the ball down floor. He ran the ball screens. He distributed, and you usually saw Kopp and Stewart on each wing, and they tried to find ways to get the ball to them for threes. This year, I think that's going to change because both those guys are good ball handlers.
Yeah, and these guys are fighting for minutes now because
Yes, they are.
we talked about. I think that this rotation is going to end up getting down to a maximum of 10 and maybe 9, and that's going to leave some decent ball players not playing.
Yes,
I don't know who that's going to be. I mean, CJ Gunn looked good.
That's what I heard.
He was efficient. He didn't force things. He hit 2 of 3 of his 3-point shots, and that's all the confidence he needs because he already has confidence. This is a kid who is used to scoring big numbers in fourth quarters of games in high school. And I saw him do it. I think he can really be a hell of a shooter for this team because he has that kind of confidence. And if he gets on a roll, he'll just knock them down.
Well, I mean, I heard he's got a really quick release. He's a big guard, which means he can shoot over people.
6'6".
But I think he's a little undervalued because he missed so much of his senior season, and he missed the summer of his AAU season. So he fell in the rankings. I'm not saying he's a McDonald's All-American or anything like that, but I'm saying I think Indiana got a really good player that people outside of the state of Indiana are sleeping on. He may not be a huge impact player this year, but I think he'll have a good career at Indiana because he knows how to play. I talked to him on media day. He seemed like a really bright kid who was invested in IU basketball, so I think he's got a good future ahead of him.
Yeah, I agree.
You keep talking about only a 10-guy rotation. Am I crazy to think that it's going to be more situational than it is a rotation? When you have that kind of depth, I mean, that's not something Indiana has had the benefit of doing in the past. So it's
he was playing 10 guys last year, though. When remember, he was giving Durr minutes
right. But I don't think he had quite the same amount of options as he did. You could put somebody in based on the situation, based on who's playing well. I don't know. I think there will be some sort of rotation. I just also think if you've got good players that are set, I don't think you're going to keep athletes on the bench. That's not to say he's going to have a 13-man rotation, but
max of 10.
In certain situations, you might see guys come onto the floor. I just keep thinking back to when he said, if I get you in the game for 3 or 4 minutes, make the most of that opportunity because you don't know when you're going to get back in. That says to me, I've got 12, 13 guys that I feel comfortable playing right now, and in certain situations I might put them in. So I think there will be a consistent rotation, but I don't think that means guy number 11, 12, 13 is going to be sitting on the bench every single game.
I agree. I can see Logan Duncombe coming in for 3 minutes especially if Race Thompson picks up his 3rd foul or whatever, something happens. I can see him putting in him for a couple of minutes, but Logan Duncombe is a guy I don't expect to see him on the court a lot. I'll tell you, I don't expect to see Anthony Lee on the court a lot. I don't expect to see Banks on the court a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
But the only other one that is CJ Gunn. He can work his way into that. And if he does, then that may make it a consistent 10-man rotation because those 10 guys, you're not keeping them off the floor. There's no way.
Right. And even Duncombe, I mean, situationally, because of the way basketball is played in the Big Ten, it's more feature centers more than a lot of other leagues. And you got Dickinson, you got Edey, you got the Wisconsin, they usually have 17, 6'10" guys who post down on the block. So, Duncan's going to have a chance to play against some of those teams, just to be a defender, a rebounder, a guy to push his man off the block so he can't post up so easily. And,
well, he could step outside. I'm not saying he can shoot like Race is shooting right now, but he has an outside shot as well.
He does.
We've seen him do it.
Yeah. So, and the fact that he stayed and worked and improved says a lot about him, because in today's age of college basketball, when a guy played as little as what did he play, less than 50 minutes last year?
Oh yeah.
I'm sure he had people contacting him saying, if you come here, you'll play 30 minutes a game next year. I mean, like, I don't know, not a Big Ten school or an ACC school, but a Conference USA school, a Mid-American Conference school, or a Sun Belt school or something, saying, we got time, we got minutes for you right here, buddy. You'll plug and play. But he didn't do that, so that says a lot about him.